Hey there, I'm Brandon, and this is the Dirt Church Devotional. You know, I think just about every state has its own tagline or its own motto. You know, Washington is the evergreen state, and I think Idaho is the gemstone state. Montana is big sky country, and Kansas is the land of Oz. At least it used to be back in the 80s when I lived there. Oz, AHS. But I think my very favorite has to be Missouri. Missouri is the show me state. Don't just tell me you got something, show me. Don't just tell me how to do something, show me. And you know, I think maybe that's one of God's favorites. See, if you go into James chapter 3, James starts talking about faith. And he says this at one point, he says, show me your faith. Show me your faith. He's saying, give me evidence, give me proof. Remember, he's being inspired by the Holy Spirit what to say. Show me your faith. And then he gives some examples. And his whole point is faith is much more than just what we affirm with our head, what we believe in our heart, but it's what drives our actions. Real faith drives our actions. And so he gives a couple of examples. He uses the example of Abraham. Abraham would be well known to his listeners. Abraham, you know, is the father of the Jews and the father of Judaism. And he uses the example of him offering his son, Isaac, in sacrifice to God, willing to give it all up. And of course, God stopped him and showed him a ram caught in the thicket. But God was pleased because Abraham did. Because Abraham acted on his faith. In another place, it says that Abraham reckoned that God could raise the dead, and so he was willing to do this. Now, this came after a lifetime of 25 years, 20 plus, of walking in obedience and trusting God. There's a couple of times he fell down, but he walked in faith. Okay, he proved it on the daily. But not everybody can relate necessarily to a guy like Abraham, to a guy that's lived it for a long time. And so James gives another example, another one that would be familiar to his readers. He gives the example of a prostitute named Rahab. Now, she had lived in the city of Jericho, the first city in the promised land that the Israelites were going to take over. And she, when the spies came in, she hid the spies. And she sent her countrymen off in another direction. And these are the words that she said. We heard about what God did, what your God did when he delivered you from Egypt. We heard about how he parted the Red Sea. We heard what you did to the kings on the other side of the river, and we are terrified. She said, but now spare my life. You see, her faith wasn't based on a lifetime of experience. Her faith was based on what she heard. Faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word. She was a woman that probably had less reason to believe that God would be merciful to her. She, as I said, she was a prostitute. She was a Gentile. She lived in a wicked city that was doomed to destruction. But there was something about what she heard about the God of Israel, that he was merciful and loving and compassionate. And she believed it. And she said, my life for yours, spare my life. Well, if you read the rest of the story, if you read the conquest, the Israelites came in and they destroyed Jericho, but they spared Rahab and her family. And get this, Rahab ended up being the great-great-grandmother of David. She was in the genealogical line of Jesus. Why? Because of her faith. So, let me ask you this. What are you doing about your faith? Chew on that. Talk to you next time.